Hi, Greg here from Corlane's, and here we go with episode 5 of our podcast, Hunt Hard, Talk Free. And I've got special guest Brian Peterson here, who's going
Patterson.
to... Oh, Patterson, sorry.
Yeah.
My bad.
That's okay.
And we're going to talk a little bit about CWD and some of the strategies that are happening in the Peace River area, and I guess, well, across... Well,
Yep,
it happens everywhere. Provincially, globally,
even,
so to speak.
Nationally, and continent-wide a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit just before the show about background and things like that.
Yep.
So you said you're kind of supporting some groups out of Nanaimo, correct?
Yeah, so I'm sort of hired on a seasonal basis, contracting to the BC Wildlife Health Team, who's based out in Nanaimo, and they've been running a chronic wasting disease surveillance program since I think 2001.
Awesome.
So I've been helping. This is the second year that I've been helping. It kind of just starts in August, and with I suppose with roadkill goes to about March
and
or
then
so.
your hunting influence really in BC. Your deer harvest really starts, call it September 1st.
Yep,
in a lot of places.
That's
so
right,
I guess
yeah.
once the samples are more available,
Yeah.
put more time and effort into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you see the change because we are also taking moose samples and elk samples. So you see kind of that, earlier we get more moose, and then you start getting some elk, and now it's kind of we're into the deer.
Yeah, and then finish with
You bet,
deer, and then work all winter putting
and then
everything together, right?
Well, exactly, and maybe picking up a little bonus roadkill.
Yeah. Well, hey, it happens. It happens for
Quite
sure.
a bit, yeah.
So, based on this, now BC currently is CWD free.
That's correct.
But we've got zones as close as the Alberta, like Edmonton area, that you said there has been positive conditions there.
So there's, I think, in both sort of free-ranging and captive populations in the Edmonton area and just west of Edmonton. So that's still a little ways off, but could be moving
but
this
650 kilometers
Yep.
is, I mean, I can walk that.
You can, and there's
Deer
not a
can too.
lot of barriers. Right?
No.
So I mean, it's more like a matter of time. It may not happen.
Yeah, you got, and we have river valleys and stuff that
do.
travel those corridors.
And I mean, when we start talking a little bit more about some of the, I guess, properties of chronic wasting disease and the persistence of these prions in, soil and plant matter and so on, that transportation, that movement of infected materials and prions could happen a lot quicker.
Yeah, you always think that, how does it get around? I mean,
Well,
think of it as like hopping on a plane.
In this day and age, it can be like hopping on a plane a little bit. I mean, movement of live animals is definitely a concern, right? We are close to the Alberta border, but
geographically,
a deer's not going to move 650. Not that I know of, anyway. I don't know any deer that are moving 650 kilometers in a season.
No,
right? I mean,
we're not talking caribou or something like that. Have massive migration routes,
exactly.
But I know mule deer that I've found or whatever, even locally around my farm or whatever. How deer that I know have made the winter.
Yep.
They'll leave, and I've heard caller deer showing up 40 miles down the road. They come from, like say in the upper part of the Sickany River area or whatever, and they'll migrate down to the Peace River for wintering areas and things like that. So you get a pretty good migration of some of those deer.
Pretty good migration. I know they've done some migration work. I think it's in the Kootenays, and like 50, 60 kilometers.
Yeah.
But seasonal migrations definitely happens. Yeah.
Good groceries and then come
and I mean over time with that, maybe they're not super long migrations, but they'll do that, and then they could potentially infect an area, and then they could deer that are coming from a slightly different population, I suppose, could move slowly that way, but
or they catch up with a different herd and they migrate to this valley.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I mean it's an endless scenario in that sense, but the I guess the main thing is to keep BC and most places to either minimize it and eliminate it, or prevent it via different things. Now I hear all sorts of doom and glooms. Again, you get potential that doom and gloom. That's a little bit too much, but
it is a bit there is. It's easy to go down the doom and gloom road, right?
Absolutely. Now, as a hunter perspective, of course, we in the north, we hunt, we eat, we do everything about that. The transfer of CWD into the human food chain, if that's going to be something.
Right.
To date, I didn't read any science on it that it has transferred over to the humans, but they have been able to put it into some lab scenarios. Certain monkeys and some rat and mice type scenario, right?
Yeah, there's no evidence that that chronic wasting disease, can transfer into humans. But there is also, you can't say definitively that it's not possible.
Yeah, because it hasn't.
There have been lab scenarios where they have managed to infect primates, so I think macaque monkeys, with chronic wasting disease. But one study was able to basically infect them. Another study that tried to duplicate it wasn't. With I think with mice you referred to, there's they have shown that generally mice are not susceptible to a certain strain of chronic wasting disease, but and this is something that gets a little bit beyond my knowledge. But there are multiple.
That's about
apparently
my pay
there's
grade.
Multiple strains of chronic wasting disease, and
Interesting.
the chronic wasting disease that you have in mule deer may be slightly different than what's in elk and moose, and that's something that I would say look for the information out there, because I don't have that information. All I know is there's a few different strains, and they may be slightly different with those different animals.
That's their carrier, and it doesn't cross over. And
that being said, it is quite possible that the chronic wasting disease that has infected deer could be transferred to a moose or an elk, right? So we don't know if that's sort of evolved independently or if it's.
They figure their first cases was like in Colorado on a was it a wild herd or
no, that would have been in captivity. I believe that was at a research facility, but then.
So it looks like it started with deer. Call it if they had to point a finger so far.
Yeah, was it? I'm trying to think. I think it was deer.
Yeah, I think in
Colorado,
in a captive one, but
right. But even there, they don't know exactly where that came from or how it originated.
Yeah,
right.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's hard to think it didn't come out of.
Well, in 1967 too, they're not looking for
it. They're not. So.
So it was just an abnormality, and something got sick, different than anything they've seen before.
I don't know exactly how it originated, but that's where it was first detected. That's
interesting. Right. And then, like you say, how it has kind of jumped around to different areas.
Yeah.
As a hunter, our biggest, fears are if BC gets chronic wasting disease, what will that look like for hunting opportunities and everything else as it goes forward? I think, just in the background, I see different deer regulations being opened up more and more. Like they're adding more deer harvest. They're adding points restrictions are dropping off. From the backside, I think they're trying to manage the population and to lower the concentration a little bit to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't say that that's something that's actively happening right now.
But it seems the shift is.
Yeah, I mean, some of those, but some of those point, lowering of say point restrictions. I think there's multiple reasons for some of those things, and it could be taking pressure off. Let's say the 4-point bucks or something, right? And saying, hey, maybe we're going to have more 4-point bucks remaining after harvest if we allow people to target some smaller. And I mean, there's lots of debate you could go on into that.
This is the story that
right. I don't know.
There's only 2 points breeding my deer because. Well, that's because we shot all the 4s and 3s. That sort of scenario.
Right, and I don't know whether that's something that's occurring or not.
But I guess.
But I do, to my knowledge, there is no relation between the risk of chronic wasting disease and allowing any more liberal sort of hunting options.
To basically man-made population reduction, so to speak.
Sure. Now it's interesting. I mean, should chronic wasting be detected somewhere in the province, then that could be a scenario where you open up certain areas where they are either at higher risk or you want to get samples. Like you want more samples from an area where you've had a positive detection, then I could see them opening up
Can't take samples from living critters.
And they did something similar like in Alberta, right? When it was detected there, they allowed quite a few deer to be shot. They had they even had a government I think, sharpshooters out collecting samples as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, that then you can solidify some information quickly and be able to.
Actually, I mean, it's probably a good point, a good time to just sort of, should chronic wasting disease be detected in British Columbia, there is there's a response plan.
Yep.
It's in place. You can get it on if you were to type chronic wasting disease BC, it's on the provincial, the government website.
Oh, nice.
And it's the idea is to update it every 3 years, but just to take you through some of the main highlights of it. So for every sample that comes in, we collect the sample that'll go to the lab, and then we also collect a backup sample that gets basically frozen, put in a freezer, right?
Yep.
And should you have a positive detection at the sample that goes to the lab, we want to make sure that was not just a lab error or something like that.
That's right.
So then we've got a backup, sample the backup. Okay, you're totally sure that you've
got
got
a DNA
positive
match
detection.
here and a DNA match there.
Yeah,
You know, you can really
I can tell you a little bit
from.
about that process in a sec. But
Awesome.
So once you're sure maybe that you have positive detection, then you would need to start looking a little bit outside of that area, right in that area and outside of that area, to see, okay, well, how pervasive is this? Do we, was this the only animal that we can get? Do we sample 100 animals in that area and get a bunch of positive detections, in which case that sort of dictates what action to take.
Yeah.
If you really don't, then that'll dictate maybe a different action. And one of the, I think, the most important things, and I think really, interesting things that I've been recently told by the by the woman that runs the provincial program, is that should chronic wasting disease be detected, it really will be a collaborative approach between the government and all the stakeholders. So,
awesome.
Whether you're a guide outfitter, whether you're, running a hunting store or a sporting goods store, where you rely on
The outdoor influence,
exactly. That's how that's your livelihood.
Yep.
First Nations, all sorts of different stakeholders would come to the table, and we do have a working group in the Peace region, and there's also a working group in the Kootenays.
Yeah.
And basically to try to determine the type of action that is right
for
the situation,
and to pool your resources, because
exactly.
I mean, it's someone's backyard, whether it be private land where this is going to occur, or it could be something in a ceremonial type area that's sensitive, or a park,
100%,
and things like that. So you've got a lot of boxes to check, and movement of people,
and a lot of people really care about this type of stuff.
Absolutely.
A lot of people are very, very, rightly so, passionate about the outdoors
on every side of that whole equation. You take that, if you're an ecotourist and your park is now a hot spot and actions have to be taken there, I mean, it's going to be on the news, they're killing animals out of a park, they're doing this and that, but it's for a good reason.
And there are opportunities if people are really interested in this, and whether it's now or in the future, there's going to be opportunities for people to have input and to participate. Right. So
and participation is a huge one, and I think, like, from my perspective, we talked a little bit about like sampling and how to get better involved in it. I know that at our store, for every sample that's issued, you get a ticket. And you get to put it in for a draw, and you can win raffles, all sorts of different raffles, but there's rifles and it's prizes and things like that, just to motivate people to say, hey, really, this doesn't take a lot of time out of your day. It's valuable and important information that's being pressed on. And we touched on some of the different things about potential, like, field sampling kits that might be that a sportsman can do to help you guys a lot more, to tidy up the samples, make them smaller, make them easier to deal with.
And to encourage participation, right? You got to make it as easy as we can to get the number of samples that we need to get to be confident that, right now we're CWD free, right?
That's right.
I think the fact that we're here talking about it is really a great example of
proactive approach,
proactive to managing, to addressing this, and the sampling is a huge part, because if you think about it, if we have one positive out of, say, in British Columbia, they have sampled over 4,000 animals since 2001 with no positives, right? So that's good. I mean, obviously the disease is spreading, so we have to stay vigilant. But you have one positive sample, and maybe you can deal with that, right? And I mean, that one is it's probably not an isolated thing, right? So maybe it's a hunter sample. Right? Yep. Hunter's brought in a head, we sample it, it's positive. But you've only got one positive. It's a lot easier to deal with, and all of a sudden, we haven't been looking for it, and now we've got 100 positives, and they're spread through 4 different management units. I mean, I think at that point
then you're playing catch up.
Well, and I don't know if that's a battle that we can really win.
You want to catch it
that's
early.
Gives you the best chance, right? So
it's like cancer. Early detection is the only thing. Wait too long.
Absolutely. So I mean, I really appreciate you inviting me here to talk about this and just try to spread the word and maybe think of a few ways that we can. The hunters have been great. We've got lots of participation, but we can do. I know there's a lot of animals out there that don't.
And I know in the Peace Country, you'd mentioned right now hunter harvest. It's a voluntary scenario. Now in the Kootenays, as it sits, it's mandatory in certain management areas to sample.
Yes.
So each deer killed has to be sampled.
Right. So for mule deer and white-tailed deer in management units 4-1 through 4-7, in the Kootenays, it is mandatory to have your harvested animal or your harvested deer sampled.
Yes.
I don't know that they're getting 100% of those, and that's the way it's kind of is. But this is the first year that they've had that sort of regulation making submission mandatory. So there's an outreach and sort of an awareness and an education, a little bit of a lag there probably.
Yeah, there's always that learning curves at the beginning.
Yeah. That being said, I think they've got about 650 samples roughly to date. So I mean, it's not bad.
It's not bad.
I think within their target areas, they're a little over 400 because some of those samples come from outside of their target areas, and they would like to reach the 1,000 sample target, which gives them statistical confidence that the disease isn't present.
Yeah, and I mean, I've never really seen, because in the Peace area too, only for a few years it was actually mandatory to report your mule deer harvest because there was a restriction on the timeline.
Right.
You could only shoot one buck every 2 years or 3 years type thing. So you would do a compulsory inspection report, and that provided some hunter numbers. Now, right now, other than your hunter harvest questionnaire, which people should diligently fill out. I mean, you don't have to tell them where you shot it, just the nearest watershed, just basic information, how many days you hunted, or if you harvested male, female, etc. Which that's what they base a lot of their call harvest numbers on. So I'm not aware of the number because I haven't looked it up, just to see what is the traditional harvest for mule deer in the Peace region area, say through region 7B, which I'm more familiar with on this side of the rock pile, and what's the whitetail harvest aspect, because now we're getting, because whitetail is open from September 9th right till the end of November, so it's actually a really long time. And I believe a lot of deer get harvested in that earlier season, and then you have that doe influence where a lot of people who are meat hunting are definitely taking advantage of that.
For sure.
And does, they're great to harvest and great to put samples in, because guess what? No horns, no nothing,
actually,
no trophy.
It is kind of nice.
Whap and stack.
And that's a good point. So animals that we can sample, okay. Basically, chronic wasting disease probably takes a couple years to kind of incubate, right? So, it doesn't mean the animal won't sort of be able to shed infectious material, but they won't show any clinical signs. So clinical signs, I mean, and you cannot tell a deer or a cervid that's positive for chronic wasting disease just by looking at it. They may show signs that could indicate something is not normal about them, right? But there's other things too that could sort of mimic the same types of symptoms.
Absolutely.
So if you see a deer that's really emaciated, so it's getting real skinny, it's I mean, if you watch a deer enough, it could be awfully thirsty, but its coordination might start to go. It's I've heard them referred to as droopy droolers.
Yep.
Right. So they're kind of they've got their head down. They're kind of they're drooling, and I mean all of that material, right? That saliva, urine, feces. That's all infectious agents that they're basically shedding to the environment. But basically anything less than a year of age. I mean, occasionally, you see some roadkill that's like, a young animal. Yeah, that's nothing that we would sample. Right? Okay. It hasn't had enough time
to even develop it. Right?
Yeah, and even if it is, it's not going to probably show up in the samples.
You want a mature animal, which is nice because
we do. Like,
hunting-wise, you're generally
exactly. Ideally, a mature animal, right?
And hunting
classically
least
leans toward least a year old. Yeah, but does, bucks, that's fine. Interestingly. The chronic wasting disease, and I'm calling it disease. It's a protein, abnormally shaped protein, basically, but it's most prevalent in adult male mule deer, right?
Okay.
And probably something to do with behavior and the way they can sort of group up at certain times of the year, and make themselves more susceptible to spreading the disease and sharing it, I guess, with each other.
Oh, interesting.
Then I guess probably female mule deer. Then I think then it'd be white-tailed deer.
Yep.
And bucks instead over does. And then I think and the mule deer is far and away that's the most common.
Yeah. And mule deer too.
And then moose and elk are not as common.
Yeah.
At least
that's interesting.
Yeah,
that's really interesting. Yeah, because you think, why a mule deer? Now is it genetically more? It just receives it easier, or that kind of
thing.
I'm
not 100% sure, but I think they do congregate quite a bit at certain times of the year.
Mule deer really like to pack up, and whitetail are really kind of a small home range too.
Yeah. So I think it's maybe those types of behaviors. If they all start, they're all working the same food source for a while in the winter, right? They're in an agricultural field for the winter, and there is one infected deer, and you can imagine. That infected deer is defecating, urinating, it's eating hay
yards and stuff like that, where you just get a concentration. It is like being in a fence all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
Even though they're on their own. Now, you'd mentioned like positive material entering the ecosystem, A-by drool, feces, all those type of things. Now, just touching on the carcass aspect. Being that I'm a licensed trapper now, I do a little trapping on the home farm with my kids.
Nice.
It's a good time. It gets you out. Good excuse.
Absolutely.
It's great because you always got to check the traps, so no one can stop you from going out every. Just so happens it's usually sun up and sun down, right? Yeah. So you do a little hunting, a little trapping, and we're intending again to just localized population. I mean, we've got a lot of coyotes and different things at the farm, so
sure.
I will generally be using roadkill.
Yeah, which is very common.
Very common, right? Very common. So, with that, potentially, if it was a positive, it would be an infectious things. Now, there's been talk about do scavengers move it? Like, is something if they eat that infected material, is it destroyed in their guts, or will it still be active essentially outside there, or is it just the fact that they could pack away that material to somewhere new?
I know ravens, like, they can spread to prions. I believe other predators can as well. Okay. I mean, to sort of reiterate is that that is a really interesting question. It's a really valid point. At this point, we're not at that stage in British Columbia, right?
Yeah.
It is. I think it's always a good rule of thumb to probably try to keep your, try to keep the animals that are either harvested or roadkill that you've collected, keep them as use it fairly, as local as you can, right? So that you're not, by chance moving infectious agent over a far distance, but right now we're not at that point. Should chronic wasting disease be detected in British Columbia or in the Peace region, it's possible that
might change a little bit.
That could change in certain areas, but right now there's really no issue with it. It's I mean, it's just a good rule of thumb if you can, especially the high risk tissues, things like spinal cords,
heads.
Kind of leave them where you found them.
Yep,
is probably best practice you can follow.
Yeah, and vice versa. Even myself, if I was to pick up roadkills like that, I would honestly think about knocking them off and then dropping them off for testing.
I mean, that's that's great
because you're getting those samples anyway.
I mean, I collect a number of them. There's probably a few headless animals out on the highway right now, but I do talk to the conservation officers regularly, and I'm talking to the road maintenance crews, letting them know that it's a legitimate kind of
you're not just a guy out there
right?
sawing off heads.
Yeah, because I'm not really equipped to take the entire carcass with me.
No, it's pretty tough. They'll come along and pick it up regardless.
They will.
I mean, headless or not, they're going to pick it up off the side of the road here in BC. I know in Alberta, they don't pick up as many roadkills. They got a different mandate over there because you'll see the same roadkill in the ditch all winter long. Right. But BC, like around here anyway, they pick them all up.
Generally, they do a pretty good job.
And then at least they're concentrating in one specific zone too. A, B. And then it's buried.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, I don't know how deep it's got to be, but
well,
it's buried.
Yeah. It's sort of. I don't know how long the infectious material can sort of last in the environment, and I don't think anybody has figured that out yet. But it could well be years.
Really?
It could well be years.
So it's not your typical virus or bacteria, which has a pretty short lifespan.
Yeah, no, it's not a virus or a bacteria. It's actually a protein, right? It's a protein, and so it's not technically alive.
That's right. You could have a prion from a mammoth frozen in the ice, and it would still be essentially.
Well, that I don't know. That I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would,
protein,
if it would persist that long. We have prions that naturally occur in our bodies, and if they were exposed to the environment, I don't think they would last anywhere near as long. It's this sort of the chronic wasting disease transforms that prion into a different form, right? And makes it persist a lot longer in the environment. So the naturally occurring prions in deer, they're altered by this.
Wow. Right?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I think we were going to try to touch on the just the samples, right? The samples that we're taking. And so right now, basically, there's a number of different sort of drop-off locations. And I mean, there's a great draw that you guys are running here at Corlane's.
Gets people talking, right?
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, you've got a rifle that's up for draw. There's a smoker, and there's a gift certificate.
Yeah.
Right. So those are
and not just a $10 rifle.
No, it is
a beautiful Tikka
Nice,
package.
it's like a Tikka rifle that
a guy will be.
Is it like the T?
It's a T3. Tikka T3. So I mean, one of the best production rifles on the go, scoped up. Yep. And if that doesn't motivate you, just being helpful and getting samples. I mean,
exactly. I mean, I don't know. I'd like to think that people don't necessarily need the motivation, but it doesn't hurt, right?
Yeah, but everyone likes to.
And so we're asking hunters to bring in heads to. I mean, you can bring it to your local butcher. You can bring it. There's either one of the government offices. So there's the Ministry of Forests building on 17th.
So up on 17th.
Yeah, there's other locations in the North Piece as well that'll accept the heads. Yeah, because
Richard's doing the
Richards
heads.
And Poos. Yeah, Poos Poopy, he'll do it. There's another butcher in Rolla. Her name's Brenda, B&R Butchers.
B&R,
yeah, she's collected a few for me as well, so that's good. But, I think, actually, let me just talk about the tissues that we're taking from deer.
Yeah, and
then from moose and elk, and then we can maybe transition into potentially improvements, at least.
Oh, for sure. Like our little bit of conversation.
Yeah, I think it's got
super
potential.
positive on the deer.
Okay, so for mule deer and whitetail deer, we're taking tonsils and we're taking lymph nodes. They're retropharyngeal lymph nodes. So tonsils, they're basically just kind of the back of the throat. Like it's a little different on the deer.
Yeah.
But they've got two tonsillar crypts, and in behind those tonsillar crypts in their throat are the tonsils. The retropharyngeal lymph nodes are kind of, if you were to landmark kind of around here, and then you've got your windpipe, and you've got a spine, and it's kind of in between there, sort of buried in fat. They're kind of, you know, almost balls like that, right?
Just the marble or
yeah, kind of something like that. And it,
Yep.
you know, sometimes they'll be like cleary to opaque, almost in a way, like a little translucent, white or creamy. Other times, depending if they've had a little trauma,
Yeah.
you know, they can be kind of bruised up and whatnot.
rutted up bucks you might have yourself.
Yeah, I don't know if that affects it,
I
but
don't
it's
know.
more like if it's been shot in the head or if it's been, you know, walled
damaged.
by then the trauma could show in there, even though the trauma might
especially
not
a
be right
roadkill
from
or
there.
something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, exactly. But one of the things, and then on moose and elk, we're collecting the lymph nodes again, so we'll kind of back up in here, and we're collecting part of the brainstem called the obex. And you're saying when you remove a head, you're often you're doing it right at that atlas joint.
You can do it with a knife right at the atlas joint,
right?
Crack and head comes right off.
And then you're looking at the atlas joint, and you're looking at that little white thing that's in there, right?
You betcha.
And that's part of the brainstem. And then if you're just to kind of cut, there's some little threads. If you go into that hole in the atlas joint or the right, that leads to the brain.
Yep.
And then you just kind of cut some of the threads. They're little kind of connecting tissues or something.
Yeah,
right?
and they just
and
crunch.
Then, I mean, we use a grapefruit spoon, and we just kind of rock it back and forth, and and then we can pull it out, and there's a place on that brainstem where it splits, and it shows a little Y, and that's the part that we sample. So that's called the obex or OBEX.
Yes.
You could probably also use a knife to do that as well. Generally, to collect these samples does take a little bit of practice, right? But there's, we were talking about a couple of ways that, especially for guys and girls that get, have trophy animals that they want to hold on to, that they can get the samples taken really easily. I will say that, if you want to get, whether it's a European mount or, maybe something like more of a full head mount, we can still sample it. The hard part is that often the hunter's not going to want to, drop that head off, and then we have to store it somewhere until I can sample it, right? So the hard part is just really in that case just coordinating to take a sample.
And the time of the year.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, like if I, say get a moose off in the hills.
Yeah.
Into the boat, you do your thing. That head, typically my field technique is to, if I'm going to Euro it, boom, boom, remove that lower jaw, make it as light and portable as possible, and then focus on the meat aspect. So that head, by the time it gets to you, could be 6 days old.
It could be,
and not in great shape.
And depending on the weather, right, it could be starting to go.
Yeah, so that was the other thing. Like if we did break it down into a smaller parcel or whatever.
And apparently there's hunters in the Kootenays now, right, where this deer sampling is mandatory. Some of them have started basically taking that lower jaw off, right? You said that's a process you're really familiar with from guiding and whatnot,
easy,
right? From outfitting. So by taking that lower jaw off, and I'll be honest, I haven't done that on a deer looking for the lymph nodes, but apparently if you do that in a certain way, you can retain the lymph nodes and the tonsils, and that might be a pretty easy way for hunters, especially on deer where we're sampling the lymph nodes and tonsils, to provide a lower jaw sample.
Lower jaw, and
takes
I
up
think
no space.
And I think the participation aspect on that would be super great because a lot of guys that are hunting deer, granted I'm one of them, I like to harvest a mature buck. Or I don't hunt. I don't harvest anything.
Right.
I like to hunt a large deer. They eat the same as a small deer. It's just they're just mature and older, and that's what I look for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it trophy hunting? Sure, to a degree, but I'm looking for an age.
Well, yeah. I mean, regardless. And, Yeah, and I mean, if
I want just a straight meat animal, I'll go get a cow elk late.
Yeah.
But for the thing I like to do, I like to hunt. I like to be there. If I don't harvest something, it doesn't matter.
And I mean, this is really, I think is really important. Talking to, especially people that really do focus on those mature animals, right? Because that's, often the animals that we would like to sample. Right. So how can we get more participation on those mature animals where people don't, or hunters don't want to necessarily, they want to hold on to that head for
they're packing it around
mount, for a full head mount, whatever it is.
And a lot of the times, like the caping of the deer again, whether I shoot something I'm looking to put on the wall, like in a full cape, like its original cape and all that kind of stuff, or something I'm going to European. Even if I shoot an average year, I European almost every of them. I hang them in my shop, but always with full skull. I really like it. Yeah. So a lot of those samples are lost because, I'm thinking brain only. Yeah. I'm thinking not thinking of that. Now when I talk to you here, I'm thinking, well, that's super great if we can pull. Once I cape it off, I've got open access to all that. You just 3 or 4 cuts and it comes off like nothing.
And then taking that, so for moose and elk, taking that Obec sample or that piece of the brainstem is actually quite simple, especially if you're going right to that.
It's like a spoon into a
joint anyway.
Kiwi fruit.
Yeah, well, it's actually the process. So, I think with a little bit more,
I think with some workshops or some training, workshop or so, and get into some of your things like your local wildlife federation, your trappers association, and then just a general, no different than educating people on how to tell the difference between a nanny and a billy, how to tell a moose from this. You put that out there, they're forced to look at it, and you have to retain some of that knowledge.
So removing a lower jaw, to me that's a good option because it's not asking the hunter to, remove the actual tissues themselves from that part because, I know that it's, I can find those retropharyngeal lymph nodes.
Yes.
But you could get a lesson, right? So let's go do a lesson now, right? And then you don't harvest an animal, maybe, our timelines are all messed up here, but let's say for 2 months.
That's right.
Are you going to remember where that is?
Probably not.
Probably not, right?
But you can take out a piece this big, and the lower jaw
and if it's
is always wasted.
Yeah.
Nothing, no Euro mounts have it. Yep. Nobody focuses on the lower jaw,
right?
Except for the teeth.
Yeah.
The incisor teeth and things like that for certain compulsory inspections.
Right.
So, but you're allowed to remove the teeth from the lower jaw. The rest of the lower jaw will stay in the field. Like with caribou, with a lot of different, even your sheep now, you bring a tooth out as well, an incisor tooth. So
I think that has a lot of promise, and I mean that's just something that we've kind of, we've just explored it a little bit through just right now.
And the taxidermy shops and things like that. People who don't know how to cape an animal, they'll bring them to a taxidermy shop for the taxidermist to cape them. So they'll cape them. Next thing the taxidermist does, pull the lower jaw off and either cut the skull, and then it's done. So I mean, those parts, they will be a lot more present. I think it'll be a great tool.
I think it's I think it's really worth exploring this a little bit further because I mean we're just really this program relies so much on hunter participation, right? And hunters have been great, but there's I know there's a ton of animals.
You're just one guy.
I'm just one guy, right?
So when you got a lineup of 56 guys that want to drop off a sample, and you're actually in the field doing something, what are they going to do? Drive away.
Yes, because it needs to be easy. So there's definitely improvements that can be made, and it's really good to hear about them, and it's really good to hear about them from someone who interacts with so many hunters and has listened to
and just in field prep of all sorts, from your field butchering to mountain field butchering, where now you're pulling out, you're basically dismantling them in the field, where a deer conveniently around here is usually an agricultural scene. You can get something to it. You're dealing with a full carcass most of the time. You bring it home to hang it, skin it. That's right. Nice and easy. And at that point, I mean, to pop a jaw off, if you, with that type of scenario, and you can whack them off by the dozens in seconds.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
And even with the hair on, you can just come right behind the ear and just come down and by the lips.
Yeah.
And it's off.
So I think that technique has a lot of promise for people harvesting mature animals, right? That they want to keep that trophy, and also especially for people who are hunting a little further into the bush, right? Yeah. And you don't want to, you want to make it as light as possible.
Yeah.
Right?
That's definitely something that if a guy get together a little workshop on that would be awesome.
That is definitely doable.
And I know there's been some proactive approaches as well with certain types of scents, like not allowing. BC is now essentially it has to be synthetic scent only.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, again, if the pure stuff is the best or whatever, I'm more than welcome to use synthetic.
Yeah.
I mean, if it prevents an outbreak within your borders, and they're linking that, and I mean, it obviously contains infected material.
I mean, I think all the scents are probably done from farmed animals.
Absolutely.
Right. So.
Yeah, they're not chasing bucks around and getting
Nope.
caught.
That would be some expensive lure, eh?
Exactly. So, things like that. I think are great. I mean,
and that's fairly recent. I think that
was only been
last year, right?
And we've seen it too. Like I say, our ordering is different. We're on the Alberta-BC border, so we do have. There's notices or whatever, but there is still scent, because in Alberta you can still use natural scents, right? But I don't think it's a bad approach. And again, if you can keep it out through that means, because it's directly related, feces, this and that. So,
I mean, that's really it. It's doing everything you can to minimize the risk of chronic wasting disease entering the province, and whether that's through guys hunting in Alberta, you've got to basically have your animal kind of processed or boned out there, right? You can't be bringing any high risk tissues back into British Columbia. I think last year alone there was at least a half dozen cases where, and I think the people followed all the correct procedures. And they had their animals tested in Alberta, but they were positive for chronic wasting disease. They would have brought the meat back, so now that meat obviously has to be disposed of, properly, right? Because.
What is proper disposal, per se?
Would be right now we're basically looking at secure landfills. So burying it in secure landfills, something that's preferably lined and really has no risk of getting outside of there. So. I know that.
And there's not a lot of animal influence other than ravens.
No, exactly. It gets buried very quickly, right? Apparently, you would have to have an incredibly hot fire to actually destroy the prions.
Really?
Yeah. So I mean, the infectious agent, the prions, they can basically persist in the environment. So let's take a farm field, right? They can persist in that farm field for could be years, right? They can even be uptaken by plants and transmitted to,
grazers.
Like deer, that way, right?
Interesting.
So it is, but you couldn't simply, if you were just to
throw it in the burn barrel,
or basically if you could just burn that field, or in the burn barrel, I suppose it's not going to get hot enough. I think you need a specific, kind of furnace for that. And I would imagine that if we did get positive cases, there would probably be some adaptations in how we dispose of that material.
Interesting. Because like I say, pretty ruthless thing, actually.
It is.
I mean, that is a tough character.
Well, it's nature. Right? I guess it's part of nature, and it's trying to. It's weird thing is it's not alive, so I can't really say it's trying to live, but it's kind of mind blowing.
But it's adapted to it for sure.
Exactly.
I guess the biggest thing is as sportsmen or eco people across the board, everyone you'd mentioned, we all have a stake in this. Obviously. Cooperative effort is probably our best tool at this point. I mean, science is working, but in order for it to work, these samples, everything's have to be.
I think this and this is a really great opportunity for the government, these stakeholders, outdoorsmen, outdoors people, First Nations. Everybody that loves the outdoors, loves hunting, or even just loves, having the animals on the landscape. Exactly, because that's big too, right? It's an opportunity for everybody to kind of come together and do something positive, right? This is right now we're at a proactive stage. I mean, we can look at some of these other places and go, it's all doom and gloom. Like, what are we going to do? It's here it comes, and it's going to
zombie apocalypse is on the doorstep.
But it's it's not here yet.
Nope, it's
and
not here.
We do have an opportunity basically come together and try to do something about it. You know, we're doing our early surveillance.
Yep.
The process, if there is a case, is going to be collaborative, and really, the hunters are doing, it's an opportunity to almost give back, right? Like they're contributing to this program so that they can hopefully have this resource to enjoy for years and years and years.
Because their heritage depends on it as well, and your confidence in it, and your meat consumption,
your ability, just to
be here and doing the thing. So
or just to take, you harvest an animal and you take those tenderloins or whatever and eat them up right away, right, and don't even think about it.
It's exactly. Great. You don't even have that in the back of your mind, and it's all good.
And right now we aren't at the point where you have to be worried about that, but it's something that we should be doing proactively.
That's right.
Like we don't want to be scaring. That's one thing I don't want to do is to scare hunters into thinking, oh my goodness, you can't do this and that, right? But
and if you have a good blueprint here, where you get a proactive approach, it gives other provinces and other territories a tool to start working with, right?
Absolutely.
So they'll start incorporating that just in their education part. They'll put it in their core program. They'll put it in with this and that. They'll make people aware of it. Well, even if you're free of something, like I say, the world's pretty connected now. So as things change, the environment changes, the temperature changes, all these things change. So do diseases.
We're always if it's not this, it's probably something else.
Something's evolving behind it,
and taking learning how to deal with these things as a sort of as a community, right? Instead of just having it top down. This is how it's going to be. Some things are always going to be like that, right?
Oh yeah.
But but giving people who really use the resource an opportunity to participate and have feedback and contribute to the sustainability of that resource, I think is just it's a really good opportunity.
Oh, I agree, for sure.
And I know that we all appreciate what Corlane's has done to put on this raffle and to try to educate hunters and outdoors people, and it's fantastic. We really do appreciate it.
And like I say, we'll continue to support it as well because it's a part of our community always. And this was a great conversation. I was really glad I got to be a part of this, and I can't thank you enough, Brian. That's awesome.
Thanks for having me, Greg. It's awesome.
And we'll have to do, like I say, we'll follow up stuff as things change, and then if we have some information for hunters, or if there's a field testing system that gets developed, we'd love to be on the forefront of that and get this out.
I think you will be. Because anything that we do that's going to be sort of implemented field level, really has to be easy for the hunter. And I can't think of you'd be great to basically trial it. Right. No, say, hey, does this work? Does this work for you? Are guys going to do this? And let's go with that. And I think tentatively, I think in January we'll have Kate will probably be coming up from the BC Wildlife Health team, and we can probably put something on then. We'll save a few heads.
Well, throw me on the list of invites, and I'm glad to take part of some of that. And again, anything I pick up, for trapping wise, I'm thinking I'll
just give me a call.
I'll do some jaws or whatever as well. And
because and if you've got, I'm sure you've got something better to do. But if you don't, just bring it on by and we can give it a trial.
Like I say,
we can just take that bottom jaw, see if we've got all the things we need, and we can maybe hash out a more formal
criteria.
Exactly. It could be a good
deal. I'm in for that. Nope.
Could be a good
guy
deal.
can run a knife, that's for sure. Okay, well, thanks again, Brian.
All right.
Appreciate it.
You bet.